How's it going there? Henry here. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can get over 1 million downloads with your podcast in 2022. I have the podcast, the Positive Mindset Podcast, and this is actually a screen I'm showing here from Spotify. So you can see overall, I've had over 1 million starts on Spotify and almost 900,000 streams. This podcast has been around for more than a year, so I want to go ahead and preface and say that. But you can definitely do this in a year. Most of my listens actually came last year in 2021, and so I expect to do even more than 1 million in 2022. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to Anchor. That is where I actually host it. And if you're familiar with podcasting or you're new to podcasting, you've probably heard of Anchor. They're the most aggressive. They actually are owned by Spotify, but they'll put your podcast on every platform there is. So, it's good to get to know them, but I want to swing over there just so I can kind of show you some growth and then talk about some tips that you can do for your podcast to grow and hopefully get over 1 million downloads. I have 1.2 million plays total for this podcast, and that number is different than what you saw on Spotify because this podcast is on different platforms. It's on iTunes and Google Podcasts and many more, but mainly Spotify is where it does the best. And I'll show you a breakdown of what that looks like. If you have an Anchor platform, if that's what you're using, this will look familiar to you. But if you scroll down, you can see where my podcast is received. So still highly, highly concentrated in Spotify. Apple is second best at 20%. That's actually been growing. So that is awesome that I'm growing on Apple because that is the Mac Daddy. I mean, if you can grow on Apple, then your podcast will really, I think, get a lot more reach. You'll get a lot more attention for it. And then other is going to be Google and on all the other streaming platforms there are. Of course, this breaks down like everywhere that it plays. You can even go down and see your demographics and all that down there. But the main thing that I want to say here, if you want to grow your podcast, the few things that you have to be focused on. One, you have to be really passionate about the message. And here's why. When we go over to my podcast performance, this right here, where I'm down here, this is August 2020. So I actually was laid off from my job at that time. And that's when I decided that I was going to do this podcasting thing. You can see that there's actually podcast episodes that existed all the way back from 2018. But that was a completely different thing. I actually had a little YouTube channel I was trying at the time, and I would just port the audio over. And you could tell it didn't get much traction because it was very sporadic. They didn't have a constant message. It was just different things that I was putting on there. And honestly, I forgot about it for a long time. You can see there's a huge gap where nothing was happening. It was just, people would randomly listen to an episode. So if we go to August 2020, that's when I really started this off right here. So August 2020, I had that beginning week, 329 plays. So I was starting to get some traction because I had uploaded a couple more podcasts at that time. But again, it was just random episodes. It was definitely always within like mindset because that's something I was interested in. But I didn't have a theme. I didn't have a plan for how the episode should go. I just was doing them randomly. I was actually recording them in my car on my phone when I would do them. So sound quality wasn't that great. You can, of course, go to the Positive Mindset Podcast and listen to them and be the judge yourself. But there was nothing special about those episodes. But when I got laid off, I made a decision that I was just going to commit to this podcasting thing. And you can see how things started taking off as I continued. So this was my old peak was October 2021, and then it started to die down. I was still doing the same amount of episodes, 3 a week, but for whatever reason, the audience just wasn't there. And then January hit, and it is right back on target. And this is way down here right now because it doesn't load instantly. So every Thursday, by the Thursday night, it will upload again. So this line right here is where I'm accurately at. I don't know why it does this line that goes down, but so this is where we're at as of Wednesday, and this should go up because it has all Wednesday and Thursday to add in there. So we should be right around that same point, which is good. That means I'm holding strong. But this is all from August 2020. We're at 2022 right now, so we're going to be looking at a span of 2 years, and I've kind of hit a peak in this area, but you can see there's been other peaks before and valleys, and it's just consistency. That was like the main thing, is that I committed to this. But I also want to talk about like finding your rhythm on your podcast. So if you pull up your episodes, if you're able to look at the content for your episodes, and I'm going to just pick this one that I released 2 days ago. So this one I released 2 days ago. January 24th from when I'm recording. It's the 26th. It has almost 5,000 plays in the first 2 days, which is great. But you can scroll down and see the listen time, how people listen through. And so for me, I know like if it's a bad ratio. And so getting to about 8 or 9 minutes, that's when the main core of my podcast ends. And it's just like follow-up stuff like, make sure you like and subscribe if you want to refer it. It's stuff like that. So it's not really specific to the message. So I see a drop off at the end. That's what happens. So I always try to see where I'm at. And so if I can be in that 50 or more retention rate at that spot, then that's generally a huge win, and that means it was a positive episode, so I can pay attention to what was liked about that episode, what the theme, what background music, and then I can reapply that going forward. If you don't have a lot of listens, this isn't as accurate at first. Even on episodes that don't have a lot of listens, you can still get an idea if it's a good podcast or not, or if you need to make changes. My podcasts are actually really short here. So you can see I'm making it 50%. These ones are generally 10 to 15 minutes long. That's how I've done it. But I also have another podcast I just started that I'm going to log into so I can show you what a longer episode, like an episode that's 45 minutes to an hour, should look like through those lines. So this is my other podcast. I just started this. So it's really a newer podcast. I've only uploaded, I believe, 3 episodes. So it only has about 323 plays. So this is going to be a good one to track. I have 2 that I just started, and it'll be good to track those because I'll be able to find out if what I did with the Positive Mindset podcast was just a one-hit wonder, or if there is a system that you can follow, if there's really things that you can apply, because all the things I'm sharing right now are things that I'm using on these other podcasts so they can grow. My goal is to create $10,000 a month in podcasting. You could probably do that with one podcast if you want, but there's other things I want to do other than those 10-minute podcasts. I like doing meditation, so I do podcasts on that I just started. And then I like to talk to people. I want to be able to talk to people that are doing things abundantly, so I created this one too. So it's all interest, things that I know I could do every single day forever. And I think that's one of the biggest keys is you have to be so passionate about what it is that you will do it when you don't want to do it, because that's where most podcasts is in. They say that I think the average podcast only makes it 8 episodes, or it might even be less than that, but it's really short because people have that excitement, they want to do it, and then they realize, oh, nobody listened to this, and it's been 2 months, and so they quit. And so that's where you pushing forward, especially in podcasting, where it's not that competitive yet compared to something like YouTube, where you can push forward and persevere like I did on the Positive Mindset podcast, where I just made so many episodes. At the end of this, I'll tell you how many episodes I was making to get it launched, to really get people attention. I'll tell you how many I was doing. But let's swing over to an episode from here. Again, these ones don't have as many listens, but let's see. This first one, this was actually a really exciting episode for me. Living in Abundance featuring Hans Wilhelm. He's a YouTuber. Awesome stuff there if you're into kind of spirituality, things like that. But it was a great podcast. But if we look at it, you can see now this one's a long podcast. So let me see if I can show the length here. So it's 50 minutes long. Average listen time is 46 minutes. So the average person tuned in for 46 minutes. But you can see the drop-off points where things fall off, where people don't retain, and then it goes down to the end. So 46% there at the end. But for them to make it that far is pretty impressive. For someone to listen to that much of an episode is huge. But you can see this was a pretty good episode. I mean, it made it all the way to the end, over 40%, which on my other podcast it's not, because at the end of this, I'm saying, subscribe and all that stuff so people start clicking out. But let's look at a not so popular episode, so that way you can see what that looks like. So I did an episode with this one here, and you can see retention was really low. Average listen time, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. The person that this podcast was with is awesome. I love what she does, but it wasn't really my target audience in the subject matter, and so you can tell. So that's where it's really important to try to find guests that make sense for your target audience. Joe Rogan is probably one of the biggest podcasters on the planet, and he has just anybody and everybody can be on his podcast. But he's Joe Rogan and he has a show, so people know him and his show. If you're like me, nobody's probably going to know who you are, so they're not going to tune in just for you. It's going to have to be subjects that they are interested over time, I'm sure you could build that credibility. That would be the goal, to where you could have anybody, but I would really make sure you're picking people that stay in their niche, because this was someone that is awesome, absolute professional, knows so much about what they're doing, but it didn't fit well with the audience. And then I actually just had someone on the other day, and again, great listen time. So 39 minutes and 36 seconds, and this is a 40-minute episode. So they almost listened to like the whole thing. So you can see, like, when I stay on like brand or on focus, the retention is going to be there. 33 minutes on a 46. So this one did have some cutoff, not as well, but still performed pretty well compared to that one that didn't work at all. So pay attention to your episodes. Go back, look at the numbers. That way you can make decisions that make sense based on what the statistics are showing you, not just how you feel about things. Because there will be certain things that you absolutely love, that you put so much work into, and the audience is just not going to receive it well. And so what sometimes people do is they double down on the things they love, and I think that really makes it difficult, because just because you love it doesn't mean everybody else loves it. And for me, especially with the Positive Mindset podcast, I have a mission behind it, is where I want to help people raise their vibration, raise their perspective on things, and it's really important to me. So sometimes something or a process that I love, if it's not received well, I have to get rid of it, because it gets away of my mission. My mission isn't to do what I love and get pleasure out of it wholly. I do get pleasure out of it, and I do love doing it, but it's not about me, especially with that message. It's about everyone else that listens. And so that's where I make those pivots, and I think that's why I've had a lot of success, and it's going to be the same thing I do on these episodes. But the number one thing besides consistency is just creating momentum. And with the Positive Mindset, I absolutely did that. So in the end of August, when I started doing that, like professionally, if you want to call it that, when I went all in, I made a commitment that I was going to do an episode every single day for the rest of the year. I figured I had the time, I was just laid off, I'm just going to go all in on this. And so I went every single day, made an episode in September, in October, and then it was either November, I believe it was November. In November, what I did is I committed to doing 2 episodes a day. So then I was doing double, and so I was creating a ton of content, and it took a lot of time. I don't recommend doing that if you don't have the time or just the sheer will to push you through it. But I made 2 episodes every single day, and I really started seeing some growth in there. The retention was really good, but the thing is, when you do that much volume, the likelihood of somebody finding something that really resonates with them and them sharing it becomes higher. So I think that's where I really experienced a lot of my growth. December, I did go back down to 1 a day, just because I was exhausted from doing that many. And I could tell at that point I had grown really well, and I wanted to focus more on quality, not so much on quantity during that time. After that, I made it through the year doing an episode every single day. In January, I realized that I had an opportunity to do less, because what I wanted to focus then is on my average listens per episode. When your average listens per episode goes up, that's how you can get ads, that's how you can get better sponsorship deals. And so I figured I'll do a few less episodes, so that way they get a few more listens, because I was putting out so much content. If you missed one on Tuesday, you didn't have to go back, because there'd be a new one. So you just ended up missing the one on Tuesday. So by dropping down to 5, like I did then, it gave people the opportunity to go back if they missed one, because there wasn't always a brand new one for them to catch up on. Eventually, I did drop it down to 3 a week, and that seems to be the sweet spot for that episode, for that podcast. It's not a daily show, so it doesn't have to be daily. Like, it's not in line with news or anything like that. It's just content. It's just for people, to enjoy. And so going down to 3, I think, was the home run, but I wouldn't have started there. And I'm glad that I pushed through doing 1 every single day, kind of doing an extreme commitment, even going to 2 every single day, because there was so many times where I didn't want to do an episode. I just didn't have the energy. I couldn't come up with the ideas. Like, it was just a really tough thing. But because I forced myself to do it and did it anyway, now I would call it stress management for creating content is much stronger. And I know that I will never miss my episode. As long as I'm doing that show, I will make an episode when the episode is due, because I've just committed so long to doing it now that it's in my blood. It's something that I can't shake. And so that is how I plan on doing more than 1 million. I plan on getting these episodes, these other podcasts, up to 1 million a year. But that is how I plan to do it, with consistency, with looking at the numbers, seeing how people receive them, where they tune out, so that way I can make improvements, figure out what they did at that time to make them tune out, and constantly improve the product with consistency and excitement about the episodes I'm doing. Well, thank you so much for watching this. If this was helpful, please subscribe, follow along. The whole goal here is to figure out how you can build $10,000 a month of income from podcasting, because I believe if you can do that, if you're doing a podcast that you love, something that you're really passionate about, if you could make $10,000 a month, you could absolutely quit your job. Like, anybody could do that. That's life-changing money if you're making that, especially if you're making that as a business, doing it through podcasting. So you could leave your job, or if you love your job, you can still do it without the pressure of needing that paycheck. You can take this money and invest it. You can just live a really abundant life. And so that's why I'm on this mission to $10,000 a month through podcasting. Well, again, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.